off by showing the clean side of the workshop,
Whoa, frame
and
rate's really
this
bad.
is the 3D printing area. And so
Wow.
I have two printers over here. You can see their control panels. And I have
Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention just on that photo is, yeah, here we go. The printer on the right actually printed all the parts to build the printer on the left.
That's cool.
Yeah.
two printers over here. You can see their control panels. And I have one printer over, my oldest printer over here. And then I have a resin printer over here. I plug that in when I'm going to use it. It can print smaller things but much higher detailed. And then I have a computer server that I built over here, so that's what runs all my home automation projects. And so when I say it's the clean side of the workshop, I'm really saying it doesn't get dusty. This is the entrance to the woodworking side of the workshop, which I'll think of as the dirty side, but that just means it gets dust as opposed to the clean side where the printers are. Pole is in the way, of course. So the first I have is the big work table. That's where I do all of my breaking down of plywood, and just that has to be kept clean between projects because that's where I do everything. So I wouldn't be able to start anything new if there was stuff on there. The
Hey,
the tool holder organization wall.
Yeah.
Hey, Steve, when you're breaking down plywood, a 4x8 sheet, that's quite an overhang on that table. Do you have another one you roll up or?
No, it's the table is about 6 feet long, and so it's only about a foot on each end, and it really doesn't end up with any sag.
Okay.
But before I cut on the table, I put down sheets of rigid foam insulation that just are just the profile of the table itself. So that's that doesn't do anything for the overhang, but that's what causes, that's what prevents me from cutting into the table itself.
Of course. Yep. Thanks.
Okay.
And the only workbench only thing made out of wood in the room that I didn't build, the Harbor Freight workbench, that's the clutter catcher. But if I move over here, you can see some cabinets that I made and some electronic stuff over on the left. On the left side, the left upper cabinet is for glue things. The right upper cabinet is for screws, fasteners, sort of things. The left lower one tends to have sandpaper and some chemicals, and the right lower has some tools that are less frequently used.
Awfully clean.
Over here, I have a metal lathe, which I got in 2020, and it's sitting on a concrete countertop that I made and a cabinet that I made. This is my miter station, which I designed. It sits on top of two Festool containers. The top will simply lift off the side cabinets, and the whole thing can be wheeled out pretty easily.
One thing I forgot to mention about this is I designed an extension that can be attached to either end of the miter station. So if I am cutting something longer, which isn't very often, I can simply screw that to threaded inserts on either side, and I've got a removable foot, and so that extends the length. When I do that, I just have to pull the miter bench forward a little bit, which is easy since it's on wheels.
It's cool.
Very.
I also have my router table, which I is my hybrid modification of the Craig and New Yankee Workshop designs. The top lifts up for easy access. The front door opens, so it's very easy to change bits. My electronics, my soldering station cabinet doesn't have any particular permanent place. It just is in here because I've been using it lately. Drill press cabinet, lathe, of course. I should rebuild the lathe stand. So each cabinet has a function. So lathe tools and pen blanks and stuff like that on the left, and then slow speed and high speed grinders. My CNC cabinet, nice full extension pull-out drawers. You need plenty of storage for accessories for that. And then my Festool cabinet with the MFT. I designed that so that the height of the table is the same as the height if the table was standing on its own legs. So if I were ever to buy another MFT table, I could sit the two next to each other and they would mate. Metal cutting bandsaw table. I made that too small, it's too tippy. Sanding and planing station, laser engraver, a Harbor Freight pneumatic cart that I'm planning on putting a wood top on, so that when at the highest height it'll be the same height as the big work table. So this will be usable as a workbench by itself, but then also as a lift to get things on and off the big work table. And I have my wood cutting bandsaw and table saw and a sander and the jointer behind there. I pull them out when they're needed. Special organizational thing to point out with the Tormek grinder is I designed this tool holder on the CNC and cut it out and then painted it with car underbody coating. The idea was to make it slightly cushioned, but it's just black, and but it's organized. These tool holders always get special attention when people come in. They're actually easy. They're not cut on the CNC. All I did was take one board, lay out the tools on it, trace them out, route the finger grooves next. It's important to do that, and then use a jigsaw to cut the tool outlines all the way through, and then I glue it on top of another board, and then I mount that on the wall at a 12-degree angle. So they're very easy to make by hand. They take a couple of hours, but everybody likes them. And it makes it very easy to spot when a tool isn't back where it should be. Lathe chucks and centers and stuff are wall mounted, as you can see here. Also, I have a really big first aid kit that I have fortunately never had to use. And a workshop sign that I carved in 3 dimensions on the CNC. Something I'm working on for more things in the shop is I designed and I've started to print these drawer organizers that prevent all the stuff from sloshing around in the drawers. And they're pretty quick for me to print with this printer. Here are some tenon calipers that I designed and 3D printed. These allow me to measure the optimal minimum and maximum width and length for tenons based on the jaws and chucks. One thing that was a big upgrade was when I replaced the fluorescent lighting with LED lighting, which is a lot brighter, and I've added a lot more lights. And so the room is always very bright to be in and cheerful to work in. The other thing is, this was an ordinary basement when I moved in, and I painted it with the concrete with concrete stain, And so it really makes it a lot cleaner looking. Here's a view of my clamp rack, which is the New Yankee Workshop clamp rack design. And you also see the back of my lathe tools where I cut a bunch of PVC pipe and welded it together, and then that holds the taller tools behind the front slope panel with a magnetic bar that holds the smaller chisels. One other thing I'll mention is that besides this, the Harbor Freight workbench and the metal lathe workbench, which I was told kind of has to be stationary, all the other cabinets in the room are on either retractable in the case of the CNC cabinet or the big work table, or double locking casters. That means that I can completely empty out this room by myself in a couple of hours when I want to repaint the floor, or I have just totally flexible workshop arrangement. I can move the lathe out of the way when I need to do a table saw project. I can basically do whatever I want.
Steve, what do you do for dust collection? I know I've been in your shop and I don't remember.
I have two of the Festool dust extractors. So whenever I'm using so I have the bigger one under the miter saw station, which I also use for the CNC. And then I have the mini near the MFT table. I also have the traditional bag style dust collector, which with a 4-inch hose, which last couple of years I upgraded to a canister instead of a bag, the fabric bag. And I'm just nuts. Cleaning up after turning a bowl or something has often been a family affair. My son liked helping with we all got involved.
So do you use the canister unit, for example, when you're sanding on the lathe?
Sometimes, yeah. I have a stand that holds up the nozzle behind the lathe. I don't use that as much as I should, but I do. And on the big dust collector, I also have a trash can as a not quite cyclone separator. So that's what ends up with all the bowl shavings. I actually don't change the bag on the big dust collector very often because most of it ends up in the trash can.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I also had to hook up a vent fan that fits in that cellar window for when I'm using the laser engraver, because that'll fill the whole room with smoke in seconds.
Well, this is the welcome to Lost Loon Woodworks set sign hangs. The shop is basically built in a two-car garage, and if you open the one garage door, you're greeted by the sign hanging up. So that's the entrance, and this tour is going to kind of be from the front coming in, going around the general wood shop area, and then we'll end up in the back room, which is the turning area. So let's go to the next slide. Just hanging is the first of the general woodworking area. And as you can see, this is not as neat and pristine as Steve Pryor's, but it works for me. So right in front of us on the right side is a joiner table that I made with a power lift and a big Porter cable joiner in it, or a router, rather. I said joiner table, a router table. And it is the same height as the table saw behind it. So in this position, it serves as a very long outfeed table. Next to it is a planer, and next to that is a Delta sanding center. And everything is mobile. The only things that get moved regularly are the router table and the planer. To use either one, I have to rearrange them slightly. So now we'll go around to the right of the router.
Hey, Jim,
table.
before you move on from that, can I ask a question? Sorry. That design of the router table, with the door at the front with the glass. I think that was the exact same design. It looks pretty similar to the previous demo. Is that like a standard design that you guys, that Steve, you and Steve found? Or?
Years ago, a magazine called, I think it was American Wood Turner, or not American Wood Turner, American Woodworker. I used to get that magazine. They published a design for a router table, and then there was another subsequent set of plans that was sold separately that I bought, and I combined the two. But then the plexiglass door, that was my own, and the doors were all my own design. I improvised. And at the top was purchased. It's a, what is it, Bench Dog, I think is the name of it, top. So let's go to the next slide.
Yeah, everybody seems to have the same idea on the router tables. As I had mentioned in my video, mine was a combination of the Craig design and the New Yankee Workshop design.
All right, thanks, guys.
Okay, now we've moved alongside the table saw, which is on the left, and you can see on the right is the bandsaw. Behind it, my Super Dust Gorilla, a chop saw, and if you took a right turn at the bandsaw, you'd go out into the turning area, which is the back room on the back side of the garage. So let's move to the next slide. Just a little shot here of the dust collection. I've run metal ducting all over the place so that every machine is connected to it, all with blast gates. And I upgraded to this big dust gorilla from Oneida Systems, I don't know, 15 years ago, I guess. I did have a bag system. I didn't have the overhead ducts. I had plastic pipes on the floor. It was a disaster. So I bit the bullet and went for a first-class system, and it's worked out very well. The only negative I would say about it is it's a little bit loud.
Yeah.
And ideally, it would be on the other side of the wall in a separate little enclosure. But I just don't have the ability. I can't do it. I can't add on that side of the garage due to the zoning. It's too close to the lot line, so I can't do it.
Oneida makes as an accessory. I haven't spent the money for it. It's expensive. I think it's $250, but they make a muffler that actually is an accessory that goes inside your HEPA filter, and it's supposed to lower the decibels, I think 5 to 7 decibels, which is significant, but it's expensive.
I will have to look into that. I wondered about that because on the old bag one that I had was a Grizzly. It was a Grizzly. And they offered a dust or a muffler system, which I put on it. I've since sold. I sold that system a long time ago, but I've been curious as to whether I could do something with this. So I'm going to look into that. Thank you.
It goes inside the HEPA, so it doesn't take up any more room. It fits inside the connular shaped filter that you show in white.
That'd be fantastic. I mean, even 6, 7, 8 decibels is significant.
I believe it is that. Don't quote me, but it's significant.
Yeah. Okay, so let's look at this picture, and we're just going to make another left turn. And the chop saw is on the right. You can just barely see the little extension bench. And if I need to do really long pieces on it, I can use the drill press table as a long extension table because that's height adjustable. So that comes in very handy. And I can put a 12-foot piece of wood on there easily and support it with a drill press table and that little wooden extension from the chop saw. So on the left is my 8-inch joiner, the drill press on the right, and then the far right corner is a nice big heavy air compressor. And I do have air piped around the shop. I find it very handy. I have an air random orbit sander for fine details that comes in handy, and I use air quite a bit. The other thing in the far corner all the way by the garage door is the snow blower. I do have to share the space with a few other things. The trash cans that wheel out to the curb are hidden in there, but we have to make some concessions. As my wife will tell you, a car has never been in this garage. Okay, let's move to the next one. We went through the door and we're in the back room, and there's the stubby lathe and all the tools in racks to the left of it. And down below are chucks hanging there. There is a curtain hanging behind the lathe for wet wood, and behind the curtain is more tools that rarely get used. Those are some of the special ones you see and think, oh my goodness, I've got to have that. And you buy it and you try it, and then you put it behind the curtain and almost never ever use it again.
That's never happened to me.
No, yeah, I'm sure. So let's go to the next one. Next slide there. Another shot of the lathe with a little feature in the shop is I have the overhead electric lift for doing large bowl blanks. And I made the sling apparatus. The track overhead supports the winch, and it runs out over clear of the lathe, and I can wheel a big heavy bowl blank in on a two-wheel dolly, get it down on the floor, put it onto that little harness thing that I built, crank it up, and then slide it, the whole winch and everything, right over the lathe, and get it mounted onto the spindle.
That's very clever.
Extremely well.
Jim, how do you slide the winch? Is that you just push that somehow, or do you have?
It just pushes. It's there's a roller attachment up in that metal channel.
I see.
And Alan Nemitz has the same rig, and the channel and the roller attachment, it's actually a sliding barn door arrangement from I forget the name of the place. They sell farm equipment and junk like that. They had to order it, and it was a hard time getting it. It's the older model. It's the square version, and the people at the store said you should use the new rounder version. It's much better, but you couldn't mount it that way. It wouldn't work. It would only work for a barn door. It wouldn't work hanging something from it. So they begrudgingly ordered the square channel for me, and it worked out. But
Is that Tractor Supply?
I beg your pardon?
Is that Tractor Supply that you were thinking of?
No, it's places in Woodbury, and it's an agricultural store. I can't remember the name of it. Whether or not that stuff is available anymore, I don't know. And this thing has been in there 18, 19 years, I think. So it's not recent.
That's great.
So go to the next slide. And here again, this is through the door. In fact, you can see the table saw on the left. This is a little bench I made, and it's basically the sharpening station with my slow speed grinder and various little wooden angles are all to set the V-arm for different grinds and different bowls. Using a CBN wheel makes it so nice because you can just make these little spacers and reset your arm, and the wheel diameter never changes because it doesn't wear. So that it makes it very easy to repeat a grind with effortless.
Is that a setup for the Stewart Batty 4040 grind that you have on the left?
Yes, it is. It's to do a 4040 grind manually. Those pieces of tape are at the 40-degree angle. Way back, who was it? We had Ashley Harwood do a demo. Yeah. And she promoted the 4040 grind. And like a lot of people, I had to try it. I have one gouge with the 4040 grind. And I tried it and I said, well, this is no big deal. And I never use it again. So, because what Stuart Batty doesn't tell you with that is it's only good for going down the side of the bowl, and it uses a totally different tool for the bottom of the bowl.
Yeah, he tells you that.
Yeah, begrudgingly, but when the first hype of the 40-40 grind came out, nobody mentioned that. You know, you need another tool as well. But anyway, I'm not a big fan of it. I don't think it does much for me. So let's go to the next slide.
But when Ashley did that demo, everybody in the group was willing to do anything, was willing to try anything Ashley showed.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, this is my regular bench. Bench, I made it in Norwalk a good number of years ago. It was a class taught by Ian Kirby.
Wow.
It was a week-long class, and turned out it's a beautiful, sturdy bench. It's laminated quarter sawn maple top and good sturdy legs and a good vise that came with the whole package. So it was a great week spent down there with him, and ended up with a really nice bench. Not cheap. The class was $500 and the materials were $500. So you end up with a $1,000 bench, but it was fairly comparable to buying one. So one of the things that I do have set up right on the bench is my Trent Bosch carving stand. Normally, people use them right on the lathe. They can put the thing right into the tool post. I like to keep it mounted on the bench, and they sell a little bracket to do that. And I made a little angular piece of wood, mounted it on so I can put it right in the vise, because that way I can have all my carving tools out. My Fordham tool is right there. If I'm doing piercing, down on the lower shelf, you'll see the little rig that reduces the air pressure for my piercing tools. So that's where I do all that type of work. And then just on the backboard is just conventional tools. Not quite as neat as Steve Pryor's, but they're up off the floor. So that's what counts.
Phone shut.
Okay, now we started at the front, went to the back, and here's the view out the window to the right of the workbench.
Wow.
Something a little unique to my shop. That's Candlewood Lake and my dock out there. The boats are not there yet. Everybody that comes in says, you've got the lathe backwards. Your back is to the lake. And I said, well, think about it. If I had the lathe in front of the window, I'd lose all my fingers.
That's fine.
It kind of looks like you've got a wood grain on both your lawn and your lake. So that's interesting. That's
actually the screen. That's interesting because I took the picture through the screen, and it was with my phone, and on the phone, you don't see it. But somehow on this, it comes up. That's the window screen. But it's kind of an interesting effect, actually, as you a wood shop. Anyway, that's the end of the tour of Lost Moon Woodworks.
That's
nice shop.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jim.
It's wonderful. Okay, next up is Don.
Let's look at the shop is about 520 square feet altogether, and that's on the back wall. And you're looking there. That's my Laguna lathe, which is tools, and down there in the back, the red cabinet is all kinds of chisels and hammers and punches and all kinds of stuff in there. It's a little auto mechanic toolbox, and that little stand roller thing you see right in the front, that's a little thing it rolls on the lathe because there's no wall. You can't put anything down. So that rolls up to that lathe. And you could put all your tools on there. There's a post where you can hang stuff. And then next to it is the disc and belt sander. So go to another slide and I'll see what else is there. Okay, there's my main lathe. That's my Vic Mark. That's when you're coming in the door. And right just the other side of it, you see that's my small bandsaw. It's a 14-inch Craftsman. And there's some tools there on the bottom, sanding disc in the back there. And there's a big block in there. I was getting ready to do something. Little box on there, put a little box on there. They coach all kinds of little tools and stuff in there, pieces of sandpaper stuff. And the on and off switch is up on that. There's a unistrut thing that holds the lighting, and that unistrut has the magnetic thing for the switch I can take down and move around at different places. So, and you see some of the duct work in back. All the machines are hooked up to air.
Oh yeah.
Go to another slide. Okay, that's the wall behind the lathe. All my carving tools and some more pipe work. The cabinet on the right has sandpaper and dust helmets are in there, and some extra turning chucks and stuff in there that I don't use too often. And on the end is another little bench there, red one that has other odds and end tools and wrenches and stuff that goes with the lathe. And go to another slide. And that's looking down the lathe. On the other wall, there's more tools there that under that window that we don't get to use too often. And so go around another one. Let's see where I am now. Okay, that's a little mini lathe I have in there. And there's a table saw right next to it, which has a cover on it because of how they ever use it. The shop is mainly set up for doing turning. I do very little flat work in there. There's not enough room. And it's a nice big table saw. It's probably 40 or 50 inches square. It's an old Rockwell Delta. And it takes a 14-inch blade, so it's a big giant saw, but
Whoa.
I don't use it anymore. I run 12-inch blades on it, but you can put a 14-inch blade on it. When I got it, it had like a 7 horsepower 3-phase motor.
Oh,
and it was I think it was a place in Danbury. They made stuff that had a big shop, big woodworking shop, and they made all kinds of shipping crates. And that saw was on the outside, and its main job was they would screw 5 or 6 sheets of 3/4 inch plywood together, and they would use a forklift, and they would just rip plywood to make crates. That's its only job was. It's very, very heavy duty. The rip fence and that thing probably weighs 40 pounds. It's 3 inches, 2 inches wide and 3 inches high. It's a solid steel. So it's a real heavy saw, but for a turning shop, who needs that, right? But the price was right, so we bought it like $5.
It's good for glue blocks, Don.
Huh? Yeah,
It's good for glue blocks.
It's a good assembly table. You want to do something nice, you need a nice flat surface. There it is, Just take the, I always have a sheet on it or something like that. But it works, if you want to use it for flat work. We use it occasionally, 2x4s or something. So let's go to another slide. Okay, that's my workbench in the middle of the room with the grinder station on the end. And that bench I made years ago. At the top is the core is 2x3 bolted and glued together, and then there was 2 layers of 3/4 MDF on the top, and on top of that there's a 1-inch. I just put on it this year. There's 1-inch ash on the top, so it's a very, very heavy bench. And the bottom underneath is all made out of ash, and it's all 5/4 and 3-inch thick stuff. And yeah, you see the top. We have a thing. We have shelves all the way around the room at 8 feet, so it gives you a lot of storage. And then there's an old library. You can see the old library file thing in the back. That's great. That's all full of nuts and bolts and brushes and all kinds of odds and ends and things in there. So let's go another slide, see where we are. Yeah, that's another shot with my small bandsaw, and just to the left of it, I think you can see there's another bandsaw. That's the Ricon that I have, and the wall, the back on the left is all blocks of wood, cylinders and cubes and squares and stuff of wood in there. It's looking to be dried out and stuff. And that little bandsaw comes really handy. I make a lot of patterns. So that has a little quarter inch blade in there. So it's good for that. The big one has a 3/8 3-tooth thing for cutting bowl blanks and heavy duty stuff. So let's go to another slide. After the drill press, and next to it is my whiteboard where I draw things full size. And when I'm on the Vic mark, I can look across and I can see that board. So I can keep track of just where I'm going with it. And then the drill press, and next to it is another cabinet that has patterns and chucks and hole saws and all kinds of trinkets in there. And there's my pressure pot right there, kind of in the middle of the floor. Because that's the most level spot in the whole shop. It's actually marked out. We put the pot right there. You know, it's level because the building's kind of wonky. So you put it someplace, you'd be out of half an inch. It's not very level in there. So go to another slide. Okay, that's the end down there. There's that mechanics toolbox that has all kinds of odds and ends drawing tools in there, files and all kinds of stuff like that in there. And the back wall has got finishing stuff, and the top shelf is for projects that are waiting to be worked on. And yeah, so I'll go to another slide. So yeah, that's going out. The back wall in the shop, the same thing. Those cabinets that all have heavy power tools in there, the skill saws and drills and all kinds of odds and ends. And the cabinets above there, there's all my dye and paints and stuff like that in there, my little library. And so go now to where we are, next slide, see where we are. That's my little spray booth that I put in there. It works very good. It's very small stuff up to about 1 foot high. And the drawer has airbrushes and all kinds of airbrush tools. And underneath there is, again, power tools that nowadays I don't know how to use anymore.
So is that vented to the outside, Don? Or
yeah, it is. There's you can't see it there, but there's a motor behind there, and it pulls the air through here and out. And
that's great.
It works very very well. And then the motor is not is a regular squirrel cage, but the person that designed it is. People say you might have an explosion problem, but you need a certain ratio with fumes and air. Being the front so open that there's way too much air for there to have any kind of explosion, and it's so short from there to the outside wall is only about 2 feet, and that's a 4-inch pipe with a I don't know 135 CFM motor or something it calls for. So I never had any problems with it anyways. So it works. It was pretty inexpensive. So, all right, go to another slide. Is that the end? Okay, there's my little microwave. We use that sometimes for drying wood, but mostly it's for making toast. And it's shelf with storage. That door there goes into what used to be the dust collector room. Now it's just for the compressor, and it's a big closet for storage. And the dust collector's been moved out to the outside, totally outside of the building. So you don't have to hear that thing. That little pipe up there, you see a little round pipe, that's the makeup air pipe. When we run the dust collector, we open that little pipe, and that lets the air flow back to the shop. So we'll go to the next slide. Where are we now? Okay, that's that. You open that door, that's what you see inside. The air compressors in there. I have a little planer that we store in there, and racks and shelves with all kinds of odds and end things. And the dust collector used to be in that room now, but we've taken it outdoors, so you hardly even hear it anymore. Now when you run it, it's just like a vacuum, like a regular vacuum cleaner that's running in the shop. You don't hear much noise at all. So you go to another slide. which is probably going to be, oh yeah, that was my bench. That was a project I was just starting to work on. It's going to be a big casting, epoxy casting that that's about 12 wide by 12 high. And it's part of the log, but it's a lot of it is all accumulation of different kinds of pieces of wood that I'm gluing all together, and then we're going to cast it off, the whole thing in epoxy. I think it's going to be kind of cool. It's big, a lot of color. It's going to be kind of cool.
Yeah.
So I go to another slide. Right there anymore.
So that might be.
Yeah,
it.
that's just another shot down. That's the door going out with the clothes hanging up. That's the shot down the.
That's my shop, Don.
Pardon?
That's my shop.
That's your shop?
Yeah.
Maybe it's your shop.
It's my shop.
Oh yeah. That wall, that back wall looks like mine. I was looking at it, I was saying, what the hell is that thing on the right? The door looks familiar.
You've been visiting my shop too many times, Don.
That must be the end, right?
Yeah, that's the end.
That's the end. Okay. That's it.
All right, Don.
Sorry, I was on mute trying to tell you that it was the end.
No.
We're seeing your
There you
shop
are,
now,
Mike.
Michael.
So this is my shop. I'm very lucky to have a pretty expansive shop. I have pretty much the whole basement. It's roughly 30 by 30, and I'm also lucky out that door where things are hanging. That's the garage. So I'm grade level, so everything can be wheeled in and out. Heavy wood can be wheeled in and out, and machinery. I think one of the unique things about my shop is a lot of the other people have mentioned. I have every single bench and cabinet and tool on casters or mobility kits that can be put on in a matter of minutes. So if I have a project that I have to rip a 4x8 sheet of plywood, I can move things around, and because I have a lot of stuff squeezed into that space. And I'm not really set up for flat work, but when I made my vanity for my daughter that I just finished, I had to keep rearranging things. So having everything on wheels really, really helps. That's kind of a wide angle shot of the turning area. I have a clear curtain behind my robust, and the curtain helps contain the chips. It's a curtain that I got online, and it's a shower curtain for an antique tub. And they're 180 inches long. So I think that's about 12 feet or no, whatever. It's 180 inches. So it's long enough to go along the whole length of my lathe and then wrap around one side, which I removed. I folded it back for the picture, but it really keeps the chips contained. So they hit the plastic and fall down, and it's much easier for cleanup. Those red cabinets are one of the only things I own from Harbor Freight, and they're inexpensive and they work well. And I have face plates and hollowing tools and stuff in there. Behind the lathe are my various cutting tools, and directly behind me, so I just have to turn around and sharpen, is my grinder with CBN wheels. And that's the robust American Beauty with the extended bed. The only negative thing you're going to see in the shop, the only negative thing I really don't like about my shop is it's a very low ceiling, because I'm in a basement and I have an acoustic drop ceiling that just hangs an inch below all the pipes and things. So it does feel a titch claustrophobic, even though it's big, and it's the way it is. I'm very lucky to have what I have. So I warn everyone who comes in that's too tall, but it works. Next slide. That's a close-up, different angle of the grinding station. And on top of that red cabinet, I have the rolls of the Abernet, or whatever the mesh is, and different grits, and I use it a lot. Next slide. That's a closer up of my headstock, and to the left are most of the turning tools, the scrapers and things. And I have my vacuum set up in the hole on top of the robust, which is made for their light setup, but I've modified it to hold my vacuum setup. And that's a steady rest made by a guy who no longer makes them. His name was Jeff Nickel, and he owned a company called the Wooden Nickel, and he makes a pretty nice steady. I just have it there in this picture for storage because I got it off the floor. But that's the close-up of the headstock. Next slide. This is some of my wood. I have a lot of wood I've been hoarding for about 12 years. This is in the garage. This shares with the car, and each bin is filled. And this is just one area. I have a bit of an issue with wood, as I think some of us do. So this is like probably a third of what I have, enough to keep me set forever. Exotics, domestics, bowl blanks, vase blanks, everything you can imagine, just stuff waiting to be turned. Next slide. This is an area that I have across from the lathe where I prep things. I have my VersaFlow there, and underneath are some cool bowl blanks I'm about to get to. And you see a downspout there. That's just, I hook a hose up to that to clean the bench when it gets real dirty. Next slide. I have an air scrubber. This is a real powerful one. It's bigger than I need, but I wanted to get, I'd rather figure overkill rather than not enough. And it's located on a shelf in the back of the shop. And when I turn it on, I use it when I'm sanding, and it just gets a lot of the airborne dust in it. Not so much for breathing because I wear the VersaFlow, but that keeps the air out of the dust out of the air. It helps keep the shop cleaner. Next slide. And I have 2 casement windows that go outside. The bar going across is part of the alarm system. They're 2 exhaust fans. And I don't know if you noticed, but to the right of the window, there's a piece of plexiglass that slides in and out of the oak trimmed frame. So in the wintertime, I slide that closed, and it helps with drafts coming in the louvers from the exhaust fan. So in the summertime, I keep it slid open. In the wintertime, I close it. And then when I open the garage door, there's a screen door in the garage that creates a nice airflow. So I turn the exhaust fans on, and it brings in the fresh air from the garage screen door. So I get constant fresh air going through the shop. I have an Oneida 5 horsepower Cyclone dust collector that goes around the whole shop, and it's powerful enough to suck up. I can keep 2 machines open at once. And then out in the garage, because it's very noisy, I have a 80-gallon vertical compressor that I keep out in the garage. So when I close the door, I don't hear it, because I do a lot of pneumatic sanding.
Yeah, so I'm probably going to win the award for the dirtiest shop. This is a production shop. I mean, I produce anywhere from 120 to 160 bowls a year. The sizes range from 18 to 22 inches. So in looking at the lathe, you'll see the dust vacuum system runs to the right. It's a Delta, it's a single station dust vac. I share it in the area with the oil tank, which I had outside when we first moved into the house. But that moved in, so I lost that space. And then to the right, that's my hydraulic cart. And what I do with that is, since a lot of the wood I work with is 50 to 100 pounds, big chunks. I mean, I usually order 2 20-foot logs that are 24 inches thick at any given time. I have a guy drop them off, so I will chainsaw those into pieces, cut them in half, and then I take the cart right to the basement door. This is down in the basement. I'll load them out of the cart, and then when I bring it over in front of the lathe, I can raise it up within 3 inches of the top of the bed lathe, so that I don't have to use my back to do a lot of lifting. In front of the lathe, you can see it's kind of dusty, but I keep sanding this up there. It's got plexiglass over it. I can pull it back without having to walk too far and pull down either some stain or wax or any sort of sanding gear. I even keep my my drill chucks there for doing bottle stops, pepper mills. They're all right there ready to grab. The vacuum system I got from Woodturner's Wonders, it actually bolts to the front of the lathe, and it's very convenient because I can bend it depending on what I'm making. If I'm doing a big bowl and I'm sanding it, I can push it away so it doesn't hit the block when I'm turning, or I can bring it in if I'm doing like a pepper mill, something like that. The gooseneck is great. I had that for a while. It magnetized really nicely. Excuse me? Oh, the gooseneck is great for extra light, so I can see behind a large piece if I'm working on it. So that's that section of the shop. Okay, next slide.
Come in, let's see. Lost my mouse. Here we go.
Okay, this is to the left of the lathe. And again, I'm somebody, I want everything within arm's reach. So when I'm working on stuff, I don't want to walk all the way down to the other end. The only thing I don't have down at this end of the shop is the grinder, which we'll get to later, because the shop is really divided into a woodworking area. And then I do a lot of small engine repair as a side business. I work on lawnmowers, tractors, I rebuild chainsaws. I'll cut chains if I have to for boats and you know, do that side of work. So a lot of that's going to be at the other end. But this side, right next to the left of the lathe, I've got my gas pump for doing vacuum chunking. It's a one-way system. You can see the meter I have there for monitoring the pressures. I have 3 sets of sanders that are ported, so I don't have to worry about charging them. They've got different grits on them. Even Vaseline for lubing the screw chuck. So before I put a big piece on so I can get it off when I'm done, the Vaseline helps with the lubrication on that screw chuck before I take it out. And the little stand there, it's cheap. It's made out of 2x4, but it's on wheels. So if I have to move it to clean up in the Vic mark, I use a pallet jack to move that around. So if I have to get behind it, work on it, which I have, it weighs 1,400 pounds. And the only way to move that machine is with a pallet jack. So we'll get to that in a second. Okay, next slide. So this is where I keep the bulk of my tools, and this is right near the lathe. Everything's up there. I think there are a few I probably don't use, but I have a whole bunch of different types of. I'm not loyal to any one particular brand. If I see a tool that works, it's the right price, I'll buy it. To the left of the rack, you can see, or down below, is the pallet jack that I use to move the lathe if I have to. My buffing wheels are on that Boldor grinder. And then to the left, I have an Oregon chain sharpening system. So I can bring my chains in, sharpen them up. I keep 4 steel chainsaws out in the shed. So if one of them breaks down, I've always got 3. I've got a 24-inch bar. I've got 18-inch, 16, and 14. So my saws are always ready to go if I have to rip or do anything. Ripping chains are on the bigger saws. Cross-cutting chains are on the smaller saws.
Hey, Skip.
Yeah.
We got a question. You and I guess Steve also use the magnets for the tools.
Yeah.
And I had thought about that because, you know, very space efficient, but then I heard that it can magnetize the tool and it can give you a little bit of a friction on the tool rest. Do you find that to be a problem?
You know, I've never, boy, that's interesting. And I don't really wax my tool rest, but I've never encountered that. My biggest encounter with a magnet is for some of these tools, it's not strong enough. And I'll find, like you'll see down below, I put the easy wood tools in holes below because they would not magnetize against the magnets. I didn't know that when I got them. So when I brought them in, I'm like, what am I going to do with them? And I just drilled the holes and I put them there. But I've never, yeah, it's a good question, Alan. I'm not sure whether that would have an effect, but it's worth looking into.
I've never noticed it.
Well, do you use the CBN wheel to sharpen?
Yes.
If the tools became magnetic at all, when you sharpened and instead of the metal flakes from the CBN wheel dropping down to your grinder platform, wouldn't they stick to the tool?
I've never noticed that either.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if the tool became magnetic, I think that would happen.
I have to say I have noticed it. I used to use the magnet system, and it's minor. It's not a lot, but it was enough to annoy me, and I changed it.
There's a very simple solution. If you're storing the tools, you've got the handles down, just take the thing and swipe it with the handle up across the magnet, and it'll demagnetize it. Just do that a couple of times.
I'm sorry, say that again, Rich. Do what?
So the tools are with the handles down, right? Just take the tool and swipe it across the magnet with the handle up about 3 or 4 times, and it'll demagnetize it.
Wow.
Huh.
Weird.
Stanley used to sell a little thing for magnetizing and demagnetizing screwdrivers, and that's exactly how it works.
So you just reverse the polarity?
The polarity, basically.
Huh.
Interesting.
Interesting. Well, before we jump, I have to laugh because I redid when we moved to the house, I actually finished the basement myself, wired it, plumbed it, and put the furnace in. And what's happened is if you look through the doorway there, My kids have left, they're all gone now, it's just my wife and I. So the shop has started to morph out into the finished area. So I do have some varnishes, some gloves, even a bucket there for scrap wood that's made its way out into the carpeted finished area, which is good and bad, but that's just the way it goes. So that's that. We can go to the next slide. Okay, this is looking back the other way. The shop is 13 by 26. It's not fancy. As you can see, it's dirty. I share it with the furnace. You know, that's something I put in back in 93. I had one guy help me plumb the whole thing. And then the shopsmith, which, you know, not many people like them, but I actually got it for $150 in a box a year and a half ago. And I put the whole thing together. And what it helped me do is eliminate a lot of single station tools that were killing me on space in there. You know, when I'm doing a lot of turning the chips, if I take 2 barrel loads of chips out of that shop, I was trying to sweep underneath any stationary tool I had back there, and it was just killing me. So with the shopsmith, it's on wheels. It gives me the sander. I have a bandsaw attachment. You've got the table saw, horizontal boring. And then if you look to the left side of it, there's an easy lift swing hitch on the left. So if I want to go to drill press mode, I can lift the whole thing up in the air, and it can act as a drill press in addition to being a horizontal boring machine. So that's been a saver for space. It's a pain in the neck sometimes to set up. That's the downside to it, but it's helped me with space. And then looking further down, you can kind of see the workbench. And to the right, I have a tool chest where I keep like a lot of the folks here. They're lathe stuff, but also a lot of my engine stuff. Next slide. So this is the other side. I do have some windows that look out. I open them. As soon as the weather gets good, I have screens. I do open them, and I have a fan, but I don't turn the fan on if I'm turning or doing anything involving dust, because it just makes a complete mess down there. But this bandsaw, as you can see, it's hooked up to its own dust stack. So if I am working with that, and that pulls a lot of shavings when I'm cutting logs, especially up on top there. And it's a Grizzly back there. It's no different than the other one I have on the other side. It's done a pretty good job. And then the compressor to the right has 3 or 4 different hoses running off it that expand to the other side of the shop. So I've always got air available to clean countertops off or to clean the lathe, as an example, before I oil it, because it will rust if it's all cast iron. But this is the other end, and you can see a little bit of the workbench there. All the wiring is done with 20 amp circuitry. So there's no 15 amps, and then there's 220 volts I wired down at one end and the other, because the bandsaw and the lathe are on 220. Okay, next slide. This bench I made, oh God, probably 30 years ago. I saw it in a Family Handyman magazine. I actually trimmed it back. It used to even go further to the right. But this was something I put in. There was nothing there. And I took some bathroom lights from a condominium I lived in before I moved in here with my wife. And they're still hanging and still working above the workbench. You'll see that there's some plastic up above. My installation is exposed. And I had one contractor that came in once and said to me, "You do not want dust getting up in that insulation. So get yourself some plastic, maybe some painter's drop cloth plastic, and staple gun it to the ceiling." So wherever I could get the plastic up in the shop, I put it up to keep the particles of fiberglass coming down, or just having moisture go up in there as well. But this shelving back here, it's got everything from paints, oils. There's a grinder down below. There's also a ton of hand tools, saws, stuff for metalworking, and like I said, working on small engines, lawnmowers, weed trimmers, chainsaws, tractors. I do transmissions on tractors. And the grinder, which I don't like, it's a big ball door. It's at the other end from where the lathe is. That I don't like, because I wish I could turn around and do my sharpening there. And sometimes I'm slow to go back and use it with a dull tool, because I have to walk 4 steps to get to it. But it's very functional. I move around well in here. It's not as big as some of the shops, folks have shown today. It's not fancy, but I call it a production shop. It's always dirty. It's always being used. Whether I'm down there or a neighbor's over, wants to borrow a tool, the door is open, they can come in as long as they don't break anything. And I get a good amount of work done in there. I think I have another slide. Yeah, this is back in the finished stuff side of the basement. So what I do is I turn a lot of stuff that some of it's finished, some of it's waiting to go. I have a moisture meter where I'll check. This is probably a third of the bowls I have turned right now. So between the shows I'll go to this summer, my online business, I do 100 to 150 bowls a year. That's primarily what I do. I don't do a lot of artistic epoxy stuff. It's just roll bowl turning. I'll take a tree, I chop it up, I square it out, and I mount them, and I make the same thing over and over and over again. And I guess for me, it's just, you know, how can I make that next product I'm going to sell look a little bit better than the one I made before? So I really try to get better and better at doing this one thing, which is making these large bowls. So in the back, you can see there's unfinished, there's finished, and then some of the wood that's not that great, the blanks down below will either become salad utensils, and you can see them up on the right-hand side there. They're ready for a craft show I'm going to, or they're peppermill blanks that are waiting to be turned. But that's kind of the way I operate. That's how my shop works. Again, it's production. It's not an art studio. I'm not an artist. I call myself a craftsman that just really enjoys doing the same stuff over and over and over again, and just trying to make it better. And I like to sell stuff. I really get into the selling aspect of selling these bowls all over the place.
This is not my shop. This is my house. But I've been in this house a little over 3 years, and this is my first shop. And I put up the architectural plan because they called it a new multi-purpose room, but this was a dark and dingy basement that I took out the drop ceiling and I put a door to the, can you see my mouse as I'm?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, I put in that door. So it's about 25 by about 22 feet. So it's a decent amount of space, and bear with me while it goes down the stairs. You can hear me trying not to fall down. Okay, so this is basically the shop. It's kind of messy. It's a work in progress. So it's the first shop that I've had. You can see I've got an air filter. I'm going to start on the right-hand side. This is my jet dust collector, which I've connected via PVC piping to the lathe.
I love those high ceilings, Colin. I would kill for those.
It's not as high as you think. This is I love a bargain. So this was a Grizzly 17-inch I got on sale sometime. Oh, and I just want to show you to the right here, this was, when I moved in, was the laundry room. This is not heated. So all of my bowls that I have turned green wood, I use my Trader Joe paper bags and label what it is, put it in with some of the wet shavings. And this works pretty well for me. It dries out nicely, and I've had a fair amount of success with it. Now that I'm using reusable shopping bags, I'm going to have to make a deal with Trader Joe. And then back into the shop. My shavings, which go straight into a bag. This is, I like to have my tools. You can see the lathe on the left side. I really like to have the gouges that I'm using, you know, at my right hand. And this is a little cart from Harbor Freight that is still red and shiny, although I've had it about a year, and it works pretty well. My Powermatic. I have the dust collector set up with these flexible arms. I noticed somebody else has the same system. I got this from Wood Turner's Wonders. I like the flexibility, but I find that it reduces the amount of the flexibility of the banjo. It gets in the way a lot of times, and I have to work around those two arms. I'd welcome suggestions about some other system to hang the dust collector off.
You know, just to interrupt, I have the same problem, same system, and I've like worn the rubber off those tubes, and I don't know what to do. I mean, I'm in the same boat. I bought them, and I thought it'd be great because it's on the lathe. You don't have to worry about having something on the floor. But that, if anybody's considering getting it, that is something to think about. Is the banjo will hit it.
I have the track system. I don't remember the exact name, but it's literally a track that you do have to drill a hole in your lathe. It didn't bother me. And you have to mount the track to the back of the lathe, and then the piece moves along the track. So it moves left and right along the track, and then it articulates in and out on kind of a hinge thing, and it has somewhat similar, kind of a funnel effect, maybe actually a little bit bigger, and that also articulates. And I got to tell you, I love it. I just push it away when I don't need it, and I pull it in when I do. And forgive me that I can't remember the name, but the key is that it's on a track.
Steve, it sounds exactly like what I have a thing called, I think it's called the black hole.
Black hole, big gulp, I forget.
Something like that. But I didn't have to drill anything for the track has a little clamp, screw clamp. So it clamps to the underside. And the other thing I like about it is that it sits lower. So, and the dust is going to fall rather than go up. And like you said, I can just push it back to the wall. And since I move the headstock back and forth, I can slide this thing, to wherever I need it.
Yeah, I really like it. Take a look, guys. Look for some kind of a track system.
Yeah.
Thank you. You'll notice I had some trouble with the switch of my Powermatic. And you notice the little, just let me go back a second. The plastic bag. I spent a lot of time on the phone with the Powermatic lathe whisperer out at Powermatic in Tennessee or wherever they are. And they sent me a new switch and they had me blow it out. Eventually he said, why don't you put a plastic sandwich bag over the switch? And that's actually worked very well to keep the dust out of the switch.
You shouldn't have to, though.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to do that.
Yeah, it seems like, yeah.
Anyway, that's some of my gougers, just some storage shelves. I'm somebody who I need to put something on every surface. So just pieces in progress, about to be turned or once turned, Band-Aids on the left, which I have used recently. And my work, I just put these up recently on the wall. And these are my sanding discs. That makes it pretty easy to find the right grit. My wall art is my Andre Martel medium-sized caliper, which I think is one of the most beautifully designed pieces of equipment I've ever seen. So that's my wall art. I've got one magnetic strip for the screwdrivers, an old coat rack to hang my face shield. I have a slow grinder with 2 CBN wheels. A drill press that I got, I can't resist a bargain. That was from Harbor Freight for like $275, but I hardly ever use it, but it does work well. I put in this door to I put in a more compact heating system. So I have a door to the outside so I can bring wood in and out quite easily. So that works well. Most of those logs have been there too long, many of them from Rich Sabrine. For chainsawing, I got this little Workmate Black & Decker table, And these two slats, I put this jig between them and tighten it up, and it's just the right height for chainsawing for me. Because I found bending down close to the ground while I was chainsawing was quite difficult. I started off with an electric chainsaw, but I found it didn't have the power for big logs. Particularly, I have a lot of beech logs, so I got a gasoline chainsaw, and now I'm not scared of it anymore. So it actually has terrific power. That's my chaps, my helmet, another storage shelves, nice chrome from Costco. And this is my old IKEA table. This is my new finishing area. And I put another LED task lighting in here. And the whole shop is very nicely lit with, I put in LED lights in the ceiling. So that's pretty much it.
Looks great.
Yeah, thanks very much for sharing,
thank you.
Colin.
And there you go. You see the vise?
Yes.
All right. Here's my basement shop. Put that vise away. Ready? Let's go, Ron. It's only a quick video, 4 minutes. Let me I'll let it just run and we can ask questions. How's that?
Yeah, sure.
Here we go. Can you hear it? Let me know if you hear the sound.
Hello, Steve Holm Hansen. Little shop tour, my basement
Yes,
shop.
we can hear the audio.
Start here, little compressor, M-Glow. It's about 30 years old, still running good. Sharpening center here, or area. Gouges there. I use this for my skews, the vertical belt center for my skews. Harbor Freight works fine. There's an old Craftsman sander for one of my grandfathers. Another grinder, my drill press. And over here, I got an old radial arm saw that I don't use too often. Chop box I use occasionally. Little drying rack, nothing's drying right now. Table saw. There's my bench. I do all my any finishing here, and oilings, finishing, chisels. A couple of cabinets. Planer, Grizzly planer, 15-inch. Works pretty good. I don't do a lot of, I'm mostly turning, but I use a planer and joiner occasionally, making custom orders, cutting boards and such for people. This is interesting, a little drying cart here. This is my mother's cart for 30 years in her kitchen, and I'm still using it now for the last 10 or so. Still going good. Some balls getting ready to use. I don't use this, I don't really use anchor seal anymore of this stuff to grain, what do you call it, treat the end grain anymore. It just takes too much time, and I just found a better way to do it. I'll show you in a second. Here's my cart, my work cart. Various stools. I'm not the most organized, but it's not bad. Cabinet. And there's my lathe. It's Powermatic. I like it a lot. Had very good luck with it. Knock wood. It's weighed a little bit. Fans. This is the Powermatic vent. I guess it's their new dust collector for fine dust. I think it works okay. I got a lot of fans. I like a lot of ventilation here. My bandsaw. This bandsaw is really impressive for me. I've cranked out some big. I put some big pieces through it. You know, as long as your blade's sharp. I'm pretty impressed with that bandsaw. More drying racks. I got some big balls drying here. This is my new process. These are like 20-inch white oaks right here. I throw the towels over them, let them air, get a fan going usually down here. So it's kind of like a natural kiln, I guess. What else do I got? And then I'll put them in bins here too. These are some burls that are drying. Got some holes in the bins so it can air can filtrate a little bit. I've had good luck with this. Here's my some old bowls I get ready to turn. Yes, and just cover them with the towels. There's a maple that's drying. And this is pretty cool. There's a white oak platter, about a 20-inch diameter. It's drying. That's going to be pretty sweet. And my Powermatic dust collector. I like Powermatic. I get a good deal from the guy in West Hartford. I think it's West Hartford. Coastal Tools, Rob up there. He's a good prices, good man. And then this is the best part though. The best part is out here. The dogs, they're pretty good too. Here's my yard. We have 3 of these dogs. But here's the best part. New shop. Extremely excited. Just got it roofed yesterday. 24 by 36. Gonna have a second story just for office or whatever. But really, really happy. And it's got no portico there for my tractor and stuff. So there's the yard. All right. Eastern Connecticut.
All right, I have a walkout basement, so I have a bank of windows. Are you able to hear that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
great.
Yeah.
Windows looking out over Candlewood Lake. And this size of the shop is about 10 feet by 45 feet, so around 450 square feet. Immediately to the right is a cabinet that I just finished that stores a lot of my small parts, screws, and other hardware. So let's go on further in. One of the main focuses here of the shop is my 30-year-old Delta Unisaw, 3 horsepower, and I have a sliding table that's attached to it. And then most recently, I just completed a assembly table and outfeed table combination, and we'll take a closer look at that in a minute. I call this my measurement wall. This is where I have a lot of my different rulers, levels. I have my tracks from the Festool, which we'll get into in a little bit, and also some tooling that's used to custom make the multifunction tables. This is my newly completed French cleat wall, and these are a great system because everything is modular and all these different racks come right off and you can move things around. I just completed this station right here, which is my charging station for my battery powered tools, and I also have my pneumatic nail guns hanging from the bottom, so that really worked out well. And then I have my batteries hanging off to the right. Let's take a closer look at the assembly table. So these are on 200 millimeter centers, 20 millimeter holes, so this is a European design, and actually it's tied in with the Festool product line, but there's a number of products that are made that are compatible with that design. So one of them are these different kinds of right angle jigs that are made, and you have these things called bench togs, and these are what secure everything into the bench. And here's a great example. If you wanted to have a 90-degree piece, it would be able to clamp it in place and drill your holes or what have you. This is the tooling that's used to be able to custom make the multifunction table, and this works really great. I was able to build this whole piece here using that tool. Off here to the side, the other beauty here are these clamps. So they just slip into the holes and rotate around, and then you can lock your parts in. Here's some more bench dogs that I've placed in here to show you an example of how you can hold a piece. Like if you want to do sanding and things like that, it prevents your piece from moving around. And then of course, I was also showing you about the clamp. So this is another another way that you can hold stuff down. Works really great. And then this is a little cam that you can use also to hold pieces to your assembly table. This is a little storage area I have, TV above, everything that is in the shop. Most things are on wheels so I can roll things around. I use a lot of these hefty storage bins. They come in different sizes and they're interchangeable, and that's what I like about the way they nest. And I have all kinds of different stuff stored in all those different containers throughout the shop. This is my light combination light and dust collector boom that I have just put together, and it basically swings in different directions, so I can bring light, especially in the evening hours. I can bring light over to the assembly table if I need it, or if I'm using the table saw. So in this case, I have my dust collector hose, and it just fits inside this new blade guard that I've just installed on my Unisaw. So let's go down and take a look at that. This is a great aftermarket product. It really is a vast improvement over the original design of a blade guard for the Unisaw. It's modular, it has a little flashlight in the front, and it easily clips off, and there's a great riving knife inside there, so you can adjust it based on the blade height that you set. So this has been a major upgrade that I actually just finished on my saw. Here's my lathe set up here. I have my grinder for sharpening on the left and my little mini lathe. It's amazing to me all the different things I've been able to make with this small lathe that I bought way back in 2006, and it's really done well for me. This is the same tool that I use to do my metal spinning with my pewter, and it's been a great little tool. Right now, this is going to be my next project. I'm going to build a whole new lathe bench. It's going to be enclosed. It's going to have all my tools and everything mounted, and it also is going to have an extension, so I'll be able to turn longer pieces, which is something that'll be really great. All my tools right now are currently in the tool cabinet to the right of the lathe. This is another major improvement that I've made to the shop. I just finished building this workbench. This thing is a beast. It's made out of 4x4s, 2x4s, and extruded aluminum. The aluminum is because I made this track system. I purchased this product here from a company out in Colorado. It's actually a higher quality track mechanism than even what Festool makes. And this is great for being able to cross-cut various wood, plywood, etc. If you can see over here, I have a fence system that's adjustable, and it's held in by those same bench dogs. So again, this is that multi-function table concept again with those same bench dogs that we talked about over at the other area. And again, this is the guide rail for the track saw. So it's on a hinge mechanism. So you just drop that in place, locks perfectly in. This is a battery powered tool, and this thing cuts like butter. It's really great. It has a thin kerf blade on it, battery powered, fits in this slot like this. You push the button here, the blade comes down, goes right into the wood, has an anti-kickback feature, and you just basically bring it on through. The other thing that's really nice is I have a Bluetooth for the dust extractor. And if I had batteries in it, you can sync the battery to the extractor such that when you turn the saw on, it'll automatically turn the vacuum on and turn it off when you release the trigger on the saw. So this is a great upgrade to my shop, and so I'm really pleased with the way this turned out. To the right there, I have a small metal lathe that I use to primarily turn things like brass fittings and finials and my pewter pieces. And then I have a tiny little mini saw up above and a miniature drill press up above. And then to the left there, I have my chop saw. And one of the things I'll mention that that particular cover that I have over it does a great job of catching all the sawdust. I'm really happy with the way that thing works. This is my utility room. This is where I have my 2 horsepower Oneida dust collector, clamp rack, my 60-gallon air compressor, and then I have shelving units that I keep all of my glues and solvents and so forth. Just a quick point, I'll mention that I've since taken some of the solvents out of that room just from a safety situation. Again, because the heater's in there and so on. I mean, I always have the door open and there's plenty of ventilation, but just to be on the safe side, you know, I've taken out the flammable materials out of the utility room, just to mention that. This is my Shopsmith. This is one of those 5-in-1 woodworking tools. This was my first major purchase over 40 years ago when I first got into woodworking, and I still use it today, not as much as in the past because I've replaced a lot of the parts on it with dedicated tools. One of the main things I still use this for is horizontal drilling. I use the bandsaw there to the left for cutting pewter, so pewter is very soft and I just have a metal cutting blade in there, so it's dedicated to the pewter. Here's my 14-inch bandsaw, Raycon. This is a great saw and a major upgrade, of course, over my Shopsmith tool, so I love this thing. This is my Delta drill press. I made a recent upgrade to this by adding this 48-inch woodpecker fence, and the great thing about that is that it's hollow and I have a dust collector hooked up to the end of it. And so this was one of my last, let's say, areas that I wanted to try to really do a better job of collecting sawdust. And it does a pretty good job, especially if you're drilling really close to the entrance there where the dust collector is. So last shots here are looking out the windows, being able to look out on Candlewood Lake, and I'll tell you, these are really magnificent views. Likewise upstairs in the main part of the house, but the fact that I'm able to look out anytime I want while I'm in the shop is just very relaxing and very enjoyable. So anyway, thanks a lot for joining me on the tour of my shop.